studied IPA, right? IPA symbols, and you should be able to transcribe words, English words into phonetic transcriptions, okay? And I also sent out the answer key to the exercises that we didn't finish in class by email, so you guys should have gotten that email, okay? What we'll be doing today is we'll move on to phonology. So in the first hour, we'll study what phonology is, and we'll also study the two very important concepts, phonemes and allophones, okay? These are very important. Now, when we studied phonetics last time, right, when we studied phonetics, we studied how sounds are made, right, how speech sounds are made, what organs are involved in making those speech sounds. But when we study phonology, we study how speech sounds pattern together. So how do we organize? How do speakers organize different sounds? And then what kind of patterns do we have in English or in other languages? So that's what phonology is interested in. Phonetics is interested in how each sound is made. But phonology is interested in patterning, different patterns of sounds, okay? So we'll be looking at different patterns of sound arrangements in English, and also how they are organized into different syllables like that, okay? And these are the two main questions that we'll be looking at. So for example, which of the following can be an English word? Do you think the first one, you should be able to read these, right? These are all phonetic transcriptions. So this is her paid, right? Her paid. So if we base our pronunciation on the IPA transcriptions, so it would be her paid, right? Is that an English word, a possible English word, or not, right? It's not, right? Because in English, we don't usually have her plus a P like that. So it is not like an English word. But, and also in the second one, telenaz, not likely to be an English word, right? Because we don't have the TLN as a sequence, as a pattern, right? In English. Or ngala, not English sound, right? Not English word, because in English, the end with the tail, ng, doesn't usually begin a word. So this is not likely a word. Plask, is that a possible English word? Yes, right? Plask is a possible English word because we have PL, that sequence as the starting sequence, and also SK can end a word, right? Thrust, possible, because we have the interdental sound plus R, as in three, as in thirsty, like that. So we have this sequence, and we have this sequence ST at the end. So this is a likely English word, okay? Another issue that we'll be looking at is, is P in pat the same as the P in spat, okay? And this is the question that we'll try to answer in the first hour. So two main issues. So sound arrangement and also different realizations of sounds. I wanted to say phoneme, but you guys don't know phoneme. But so the first key idea that we'll be looking at when we talk about phonology is contrast. Okay, individual sounds can function to indicate contrastiveness or non-contrastiveness in meaning. Okay, with another sound, the meaning changes. So it means that one sound can be contrastive, right? Just a sound can be contrastive and it's meaningful, right? So at least from these two words, you see that there are two P's in Korean. The P with the H, pull, and then I may not be a good example of Korean pronunciation, but and there's another P, bul, like that. So at least in Korean there are two P's. One P with an H, another without the H, right? And one is capable, each P is capable of indicating contrast in meaning. Okay? So in Korean, this H is meaningful. And H, we call this aspiration. Okay, aspiration. I think it's in the other slide. So aspiration. The H represents aspiration. Aspiration means the puff of air that you pronounce when you make that sound. Okay, it's like that. That's aspiration. Okay. So in Korean, this H above a P is meaningful because it's capable of indicating contrast in meaning. And we can do the same with other words and other sounds, right? M versus N. You see this? Some, and this is sun. By replacing an M with an N, the meaning changes, right? From some to sun. So in English, we can say that M and N are meaningful and they are contrastive because by replacing one with another, we got a new word, a new meaning. Or K and G, kill and gill, right? Kill and gill. By replacing one with another, you have a different word altogether. Okay? S or sh, su or shu, right? By replacing one with another, the meaning is different. E, feel, fell. By replacing one vowel with another vowel, you have got a new word, right? So all of these are what we call phonemes. Okay? All of these are what we call phoneme. And sometimes is not the whole sound that's different. It is voicing, it is place of articulation, is manner that's different. So T and D, for example, they are different just by one element, right? One characteristic, which is the voicing characteristic, right? D, we talked about last time, D is voice, T is voiceless, right? So it's not that everything is different, just one feature is different. Some and sung, the difference is in the place of articulation. Everything else is the same. They both are stop sounds. They both are nasal sounds. The only difference is where they are made. Okay? And the manner, mes and then met, like that, right? Mes and met. The only difference is just one is stop, this is fricative, like that. Right? And sounds like this, we cannot predict where they occur because they can occur in every position, right? Sounds that are contrastive, sounds that are important cannot be predicted as to where they occur, okay? And they are called different phonemes, okay? Phonemes, again, are sounds that are contrastive. By replacing one phoneme with another phoneme, you got a new word. So a phoneme is very important. It's very distinctive sound, okay? A phoneme is a significant unit of sound that can indicate contrast in meaning within a particular language, okay? So Korean will have an inventory of phonemes that might be different from the inventory of phonemes in English, okay? So in Korean, as we already saw, P with an H is one phoneme. P, just a P, is another phoneme, okay? And each one is capable of indicating contrast in meaning, okay? So a phoneme, again, before we move on, a phoneme is an important concept. A phoneme is a contrastive sound in a particular language, okay? And you cannot predict where they occur because phonemes can occur anywhere, okay? Now, the next concept that I will introduce is the concept of allophone. Okay? Allo is other. It means other, and phone is sound, so other sound. A phoneme, as you know, is a contrastive sound, a meaningful sound. But within a phoneme, you can have many variants of a phoneme, a particular phoneme. And we call those variants allophones of the same phoneme. Okay? And they are considered by native speakers to be the same sound, even though they are pronounced slightly differently. Okay? So allophone refers to the different realizations of a phoneme. Realization meaning to really pronounce it. Okay? Now let me show you an example here. T, we know that T in English is a phoneme, right? Because if you change from a T to a D dog, the meaning will change. We talk about that, right? So T and D are phonemes, okay, in English. So T is a phoneme in English because it's a meaningful sound, right? TO has a one meaning, DO has another meaning. So T and D are different phonemes, okay? But now T has many allophones. T has many variants, okay, of T, meaning that in reality, speakers of English can pronounce this T in many different ways, slightly different from one another. So T in top, T, this T in top, is pronounced like this in reality, T with an H, meaning with aspiration. Remember, aspiration is the puff of air that we have, okay? So when we pronounce the word top, we have puff of air coming from the T here, as in top, like that, top, like that. You see that the paper moves? So top. So that's aspiration. It's a T with some puff of air. But when you do stop, this T has no H, meaning has no puff of air. So it's a little bit different from this T, meaning the T without the air, but still it's a T. Stop, stop, stop. No aspiration, as you can see. But it's still a T, right? So it's a little bit different from this T. So we say that both TH here, aspirated T, and the T without aspiration, unaspirated T, they are all allophones of the same phoneme, which is T. And this T, especially in American English, we pronounce it not like writer. We don't say it like that. We say writer, writer. So this T, you see that there is this kind of symbol here, which means that it sounds like a D, writer, 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 like that. So this T is different from this T, right? And it's different from this T. So we have a special symbol here that indicates that this sounds more like a D dog, writer, like that. And then mountain, like here. Some people pronounce this, and we use the question mark here. Some people pronounce it as a glottal sound, mountain, mountain, like that. Bottle, bottle, like that. So here, this is another way of pronouncing this T. So at least here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 types of T when it comes to real pronunciation. But we can say that all of these are T, okay? And they are distinct from D or S or R. They are all T, but they are pronounced a little bit slightly different from each other, okay? So this is how I represent the distinction between the phoneme and allophone. The phoneme is like this, T within this slanting lines. You see slanting line. But to indicate allophones, I use square brackets to indicate allophones. It means that within this family, within this phoneme, there are many different ways of pronouncing that T, right? But they are all T's, okay? Even though one is pronounced slightly differently from the others. So this is aspirated with an H, unaspirated meaning no puff of air. This means it's what people call flap, meaning that there's no puff of air, and it pronounced like a D, but not a D, and this is glottal T, like that. Okay, and so you know that phonemes are contrastive. Remember, by replacing one phoneme with another phoneme, you get a new meaning. But if you replace one allophone with another allophone, meaning is still the same. So allophones are not contrastive sound. So if you want to pronounce writer as writer, like that, it's still writer. You have got the same word, okay? So allophones are not significant sounds, okay? And this is like the acoustic representation of aspirated and unaspirated. So this one is aspirated, Thai, you see this aspiration. So aspiration is here, right? This is the puff of air that there is, Thai. So this is the aspiration. And the vowel sound starts here after the aspiration, you see that. But when sty, when there's no aspiration, there's no lag in time here, right? So it can start right away, right? After the T, right? Because of the S here, and this is D, like that. So phonemes are, as you know, contrastive sounds. They can occur in the same position, like this is the initial position, right? Pin, bin, kin, win. By replacing one phoneme with another phoneme, you get a new word, right? And then pad, ped, pod. This is the medial position. And finally, you have the final position, sin, sing, and so on, right? So you cannot predict where phonemes will occur because they can occur in any position, okay? But for allophones, you can predict, which is very nice about it, because you know which allophone to expect in a particular environment, okay? Allophones occur in what we call mutually exclusive environments, meaning that they will not occur in the same environment, okay? They occur in mutually exclusive environments, meaning that no two allophones can occur in the same position, okay? If you look at, there are two columns here, okay? So this should be shifted towards that side. P without the H, meaning unaspirated, okay? Remember, unaspirated, P without the air. Aspirated P, P without the H, right? Aspirated and non-aspirated. So when we pronounce these P's, spat, spool, speak, there's no aspiration. Spat, speak, spool, like that, no aspiration. But when we do it on this side, pat, pull, peak, there's aspiration. Can we predict where each allophone occurs? We can. If you look at the pattern here, when we study phonology, we look at the pattern, remember? So if you look at the pattern, all P's in here are preceded by an S, right? S, 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 right? But all P's in here have no S, right, in front of them. So we can say that the unaspirated P occur after S, but aspirated P occurs just by itself, okay? So that's why we can predict the occurrence of, or the distribution of each allophone, because each allophone is distinctive in terms of its position. So these are characteristics of allophones. Allophones are found in mutually exclusive distribution. They are allophones. They do not occur in minimal pairs because they cannot indicate contrast, right? So minimal pairs are pairs of words where you have only one difference, right? And they are non-contrastive. By replacing one allophone with another allophone, the meaning is the same, and they are predictable, okay? And to represent allophones, we use square brackets. Okay? The slanting lines here are used to represent just phonetic level only, phonemic level only. So this is for phonemes, and the brackets are for allophones. Okay? If you just want to represent only the phonemes or phonemic level, you just use the slanting lines. Okay? And we call that broad phonetic transcription. Broad because we don't have to indicate the details of aspiration, the details of the location, and so on. Okay? Just the phoneme. Okay? But when we want to do narrow transcription, meaning that you indicate the puff of air, you indicate the position, we'll find different positions of different sounds, different phonemes. You indicate the position, you indicate the length, so many details, a lot of details, you use square brackets. Okay? And we need to use some special symbols, right, when we do narrow transcription because you need to be more detailed, right? So for example, people use this kind of colon, 2 dots, to represent the length. So when X has 2 dots here, it means that X is lengthened, meaning X is pronounced longer. Okay? And X with a tilde here, like this, means that it's pronounced with some vowel, some nasal quality. Okay? It's nasalized like that. H, as we talked about it, is aspiration. And then T with a wedge here, like little v, means that T is pronounced as a D or a flap, as in American English, letter, waiter, like that. Writer, potter, like that. Again, if you want to pronounce letter with the aspirated T, letter, like that, writer, potter, is fine. The meaning is the same because of an allophone is non-contrastive. For second language learners, if you replace one phoneme with another phoneme, the meaning is different, right? So a phoneme is very important. So you need to be able to practice to pronounce a phoneme clearly. But if you replace one allophone with another allophone, you can get your points across even though you might sound like a non-native speaker. Okay? So both are important, but if I have to rank which one is more important, then I will rank the level of phoneme. Okay? So if I were to do an analogy for this, the concept between phoneme and allophone, I would use a Superman, and then this guy is the human version, human incarnation of Superman, right? So this is Clark Kent, right? This is Superman, just like Spider-Man and Peter Parker, right? So we never see Superman and Clark Kent in the same environment, right? Because the two are the same, right? Same person, same guy, right? So that's the same as allophone and phoneme. When do we see Superman? We see Superman in emergency situations, right? And we can predict when we will see Superman, right? We'll see him only when there's an emergency, like that. In other situations, we will see Clark Kent, right? We'll see Clark Kent. You can predict. So when you can predict, you have allophones, okay? And they are the same, right? Same guy. Clark Kent and Superman are like allophones, okay? They are non-contrastive, and they appear in what we call complementary distribution or exclusively, mutually exclusive environments. Okay? So like this. So this concept is like very abstract, is at the level of phoneme. A phoneme is very abstract because it's a kind of mental representation of what native speakers have in their head. So this is like, oh, this is T. They have some idea of how to pronounce a T. But in reality, when they pronounce each T, it's always different So it's just like when we see Superman or when we see Clark Kent, like that. So this is the phoneme. So, and this is the level of allophone. Allophone is real. An allophone is real. Real pronunciation of a phoneme, right? One example of English allophones, right, that we study is the difference between P with an H, which is what we call aspirated, and then aspirated is the puff of air, and then just the P, which is unaspirated, right? That's what we already studied. And where do we find unaspirated? Is after an S, right? S, and then like that. So this is how I say that, how I represent the fact that the P here occurs after the S, okay? S and then like that. So this is the P, right? And then PH is anywhere else, right? Elsewhere. Okay. So when you see things like steal or spill, can you predict what type of P this is? Yes, right? Because we see an S, so it has to be unaspirated like that. And everything else like pill or pot like this is going to be aspirated. So that's one thing that we already studied. Unaspirated and aspirated. Okay. And in English, they are allophones, okay? But in Korean, we saw earlier, in Korean, they are phonemes, right? So in Korean, they are like this, and then they are like this, right? So I use the slanting lines, okay? So as I said, phonemes and allophones are language specific, okay? You cannot look at phoneme and allophone in different languages and compare. Now we'll look further to discover some other patterns of allophones, okay? And we'll look at aspiration, but we'll look at other cases of aspiration. Now we have, in number 1 on your handout, we have 2 sets of P. Aspirated is here, unaspirated is here. We'll compare and we'll try to figure out the pattern. Now you see I indicate the aspiration, right? So these are all given to you. So this, no aspiration on that side. When we pronounce the word oppose, and I underline the stress syllable, okay? The syllable that's stress meaning that you have to emphasize that syllable. Like oppose, you don't say oppose like that, you say oppose like that. So that's stress. So this syllable is stress. So we say oppose, okay? Appall, appall is to frighten someone, right? And this is record, right? Record and occur and what is that? Rapidity, rapidity, right? So you see that there's stress here involved, and then you have all the aspirated sounds here. But in the other side, you have the stress in the first word on the first syllable. Opus, opus is like work, magnum opus, like big work, like that. Opus is work, right? Opal, the stress is opal, like that. This is a type of valuable gemstone, right? And then record, record. See, the first column is record. This one is record, right? And then we have ochre, right? Ochre, and then rapid, rapid. So, what kind of prediction we can make here? Do you notice that whenever you have the aspirated P, it's always in the underlined portion of the word, right? Meaning that we aspirated the P, we aspirate the P when it occurs in the stress syllable, you see? Appall, right? This is a stress syllable, you have H, right? Stress syllable, you have K, record, like that. Occur, like that, and rapidity. But in other positions, in unstressed positions, you have unaspirated P. Opus, opal, record, right? Ochre, and rapid, right? So we can say that from our observation, we can say that the phoneme P, this is the phoneme, right? The phoneme P becomes aspirated, okay? And I will use the arrow to say that it becomes. P becomes the allophone aspirated, right? Becomes PH, like that. So this is how it reads. The phoneme P becomes, using arrow, aspirated, or becomes that allophone, the aspirated version, when I will use this slanting line, when it occurs in a stressed syllable, like that. So this is a short way of just verbal description. Phoneme P becomes the aspirated allophone when it occurs in the stressed syllables. I used like this stroke here above that syllable. Okay, so this is the syllable where it occurs in, and it's a stressed syllable, like that. And then that's the aspirated. So the unaspirated version is the P will become unaspirated P when everywhere else. I say elsewhere, which is easier because if it's not this position, the stress position is everywhere else. Okay? So we want our rules, our observation to be as simple as possible and yet can cover as many cases as possible. Okay? So if it's not in this position, the stress position, then everywhere else you will have just the unaspirated. Okay? So we got 2 new rules. Okay? Now, can you predict the P, the different allophones of P in these 4 words below? We have appear, we have pepper, we have space, we have papaya. So when S is not involved, it has to be stress. Okay? But when S is involved, it's that role, right? At least for space, you can predict, right? Space. What kind of P is this? When you see an S, no thinking is needed, right? When you see an S, no thinking is needed because it's always unaspirated. So when you pronounce space, it's space, right? You cannot say space like that, right? So it's unaspirated. It's not natural to pronounce it like space to aspirate it, not natural. You need to use a lot of effort to say space like that. So space, unaspirated. What about these 3? Now these 3, you have to use your knowledge of stress, where the stress falls. Okay? In any dictionary, they will tell you the position of the stress, but you should know, right, that in English, for every word in English, there must be one primary stress. Okay? And if it's a 1-syllable word, of course, that word will be stressed, right? But if it's more than 1 syllable, there must be 1 syllable that bears primary stress. So in appear, stress would be here, right? In pepper, pepper. So pep, right? Pepper. And then papaya, right? So pa. Now you know where to put the right allophone. Okay? So can you take 30 seconds to tell me that this P is which P? And pepper, there are two P's, right? In pepper. The first pep and then the second per. So which is which? Which one is aspirated? Which one is unaspirated? And papaya, there are two P's too. First P, pa, and then second P, pa. Which one is aspirated? Which one is unaspirated? Okay? Take maybe 20 seconds. Based on the two rules here, you have PH, aspirated P when this, right? When it falls in the stress position, but you have a P elsewhere, everywhere else. So everyone should be done. So when we pronounce appears, schwa, right? Appear, and then pepper, and then papaya, like that, right? So in this case, P appears in the stress syllable. So this P is aspirated, right? So we have an aspirated P here. Appear, right? Appear. In pepper, the first P is aspirated. The second P is not aspirated. Okay, so we don't indicate anything. The last one, papaya. The second P is aspirated. The first one is unaspirated. At least not as strong as pa, right? The second pa, like that. Okay, because it's only the second one that is in the stress syllable, right? And we can extend these two rules and also the S rule that we studied already to other sounds in English, including T and K. P, T, and K. They behave the same thing. They behave in the same way. Okay? These are all voiceless stop. Remember, they are all voiceless stop. All voiceless stops in English behave in the same way with regard to aspiration. So T will become aspirated t, 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 when it occurs in the stress syllable. Okay? And it will be unaspirated, just the as in stop, steam, like that in other places. K is the same thing. K will become aspirated in stress syllables and not aspirated in other positions. So all P, T, and K are alike. Okay? Now let's move on to the next set of allophones. The next set of allophone, there's a special symbol, and it looks like maybe a corner of a square, like this. So a corner of a square, like that. Above the P, above the T, and above the K, like that. Okay? And we call it unreleased, the unreleased allophone. Unreleased meaning not released, right? You don't let out the puff of air. You don't let out the sound. You don't let out the stop. Stop means that you have, you block the air, right? You don't release the air, right? So when you pronounce the word perfect, for example, you see the word perfect here. The P here is aspirated because it's in the stress position, right? Perfect, like that. So fact, T at the end, we are not talking about that. We are talking about the K with this symbol, right? We don't say perfect. We don't say perfect like that in real pronunciation. We would say perfect like that. So the K is, the puff of air is not really released. Okay? Or hot pot. Yes, in slow pronunciation, you can say hot pot. You can say hot pot in slow pronunciation. In careful speech style, you can do that. But in reality, when people just talk normally, they'll say hot pot. Let's eat some hot pot, like that, right? So hot here, you don't release the air. Or prep talk. You can say prep talk in slow pronunciation, but in real pronunciation is prep talk. Prep, you don't release it, right? Prep talk, and then you release the T. So the P, the T, and the K in that position will be unreleased. So that's another allophone. Okay? And what's the rule for this? Well, let's look at the position. Let's look at the pattern. They are unreleased, as you can see here. K occurs before T. T occurs before P. P occurs before T. So it seems that when you have an unreleased sound, it must be followed by something else, right? So perhaps the rule can be that you have an unreleased stop when you have a following consonant. Okay? So we can say that P, T, and K, these are phonemes, okay? I'll say P, T, and K. P, T, and K, they become allophones, right? They becomes unreleased, meaning P with that square, T with that square, K with that square, right? They become unreleased when they are followed by another consonant, okay? So this is where they are, this is where they are, and they are followed by a consonant, like that. Okay, so that's how I use shorthand to write out the rule. So it reads out like this. The phonemes P, T, and K become the unreleased version, the unreleased allophones, when they occur in front of a consonant, when there's a consonant after it, when there's a consonant following it, like that. Okay. So when you see something like right person, this T will be unreleased, right? Right person, right person. Yes, you can say right person. You can do that in slow speech style, right person. But when we say it fast, we say it like right person, right person. So this T is unreleased because there's this consonant sound following it. Okay? So now you have come across two types of voiceless stops. Aspirated, unaspirated, that's one version, and also the unreleased version. Okay? But they are all the same phonemes. Okay? Now let's look at the last one before we take a break here. Number 3. We'll look at word finally. Word finally. Word finally, P, T, and K. You can extend the K's to P, T, and K. Here you only see the P sound. Okay? Word finally meaning at the end of sip, hot, and cake, you have sip, hot, cake, or sip, hot, cake, or sip, unreleased, right? Hot, unreleased, and cake, unreleased. So these are all possible depending on, I don't know, the mood of the speaker, how careful he or she is when pronouncing this, and whether or not it's a formal or informal situation. So at the end, at least, you can see everything, right? Everything is possible. Every allophone is possible. Aspirated, unaspirated, or unreleased. We call this free variation in linguistics. It means that it can occur, anything can occur in any allophone can occur in that position. It's free variation, okay, random. And it has to do with speech style, it has to do with the formality level, it has to do with the mood of the speaker, and so on, okay? And free variation in linguistics occurs on many levels. For example, the word either, at least in American English, people can pronounce it like either or either. So E or I, that's free variation, is random. The same person can pronounce the same word in two different ways depending on the situation. Or economics or economics, so E or E, that's free variation, okay? Or fishing. A lot of people can pronounce this word fishing, fishing, like that. N rather than N with a tail, that's free variation also. It has to do with speech style, it has to do with education background, and so many things. But both are equally often, equally common. Okay? We'll take a 10-minute break from at this point, and we'll come back and finish this off. And we'll look at syllable structure, we'll look at some sound processes. Okay? I have 5 or 6 words here. Could you help me predict the allophones of these voiceless stops? T, P, I don't have a K here, but T and P. So whether they are aspirated or unaspirated. Okay, so I underline the phoneme that needs to be predicted, like this T, this P, this T, this T. I'm not interested in the last T because we know that the last T is free variation. Pair and burr, camper. So you should be able to tell me within 1 minute as to what type of allophone we have. Okay. So you need the knowledge of stress, right, too, right? So, like, do you say thirsty or thirsty? Thirsty, so the stress should be here, like that. And then you need the knowledge of stress and also the knowledge of whether you have an S, right? S sound before the voiceless stop or not, okay? The S has to be right in front in order to affect the aspiration. Okay. So you should be able to tell me within maybe 30 seconds which allophone of T and P we have in these words. So let's look at this together. I believe that you already finished. So thirsty, this T is what T? TH here is a theta sound, so that's that has nothing to do with aspiration. So this T is what kind of T? We have only 2 in this case, aspirated or unaspirated. Unaspirated, right? Because you see right here, there's an S. So thirsty, right? You don't say thirsty like that. So this is unaspirated because there's an S here you can predict, right? Thirsty. Now, what about burr here? Supper. Aspirated or unaspirated? There's no S. That S here doesn't have anything to do with this, right? It has to be right in front, so it doesn't matter whether we have S here. So in this case, you need the knowledge of stress placement. So the stress is supper. So this burr is in an unstressed syllable, so it's unaspirated P. Unaspirated. Okay? In the third one, we have meticulous, meaning to be careful. T is clear. It's clear that T is the T here is in a stress position. So this T is aspirated. Right? Aspirated. The K is in an unstressed syllable, meticulous. Right? So K is not aspirated. Unaspirated. Okay. What else we have? We have recalcitrant. So it's here. This cal, see, it's in the stress position. So cal is stress. Recalcitrant. So aspirated. But T here, unaspirated, right? Because it's an unstressed syllable. There can be only one stressed syllable in a word. Okay. Camper. Camp is in a stressed syllable. So K is stressed. K is aspirated. Camp, and then per is unaspirated. Like that. Okay. So you need to determine whether it's unaspirated or aspirated allophone. You need either the knowledge of S, right? S is before unaspirated, and the stress placement, stress pattern. If P, T, and K occur in a stress syllable, then surely you have the aspirated allophone. And in other places, unaspirated. Okay. So let's move on to vowel lengthening. Okay, vowel lengthening. This is another, we have talked only about voiceless stops, right? Allophones of voiceless stop. Now vowels have allophones as well. Okay, vowels have allophone as well. So we can compare different length of different vowels. Shortest, longer, and longest. Okay, so we have heat, and then heed, and then he. If that word occurs in isolation, and if it's in slow speech style, and if he or she wants to exaggerate the pronunciation. In the second row, we have leave, and then lee. Okay, and then seize, and then see. Okay, and I use the colon, 2 dots, to represent length. And you see that in the last column we have 4 dots even, or two lines of colons. Okay, so it seems that the vowel, they are all same vowel, right? E as a vowel, they are all same vowel. But what makes them different, the allophones different, is the fact that in the longer version, it's followed by D, V, you see D, V, and Z, okay? After the vowel, you have D, V, and Z. Whereas in the shortest version, you have T, F, and S, okay? If you think back to what we studied last time, T and D, the only difference is voicing, right? T is voiceless, D is voiced. F, voiceless, V, voice. S, voiceless, Z, voiced. So this means that the voicing of the following consonant matters. If you have a voiced consonant after the vowel, it will get lengthened. Okay, so so this one is heat, and then heed, like that. But then in the longest version, you have nothing, right? So it means that this is what we call open. This is open syllable. open syllable. It's open because there's nothing that closes it off, meaning there's no consonant following it, so it's open, and it is subject to be lengthened, okay, to being lengthened. So the rule that we can observe here is that the vowel, let's say this is a vowel, a phoneme vowel, right? It will get lengthened, become the lengthened allophone like this. Okay? A vowel is lengthened, becomes the lengthened allophone, right? V in the slanting lines becomes V in the brackets. When it's followed by a voiced consonant like this. Okay? A vowel gets lengthened when it occurs before a voiced consonant like that. And it will be longest, like with 4 dots even, when it occurs in the final position. Like this. When it occurs in this position without anything after it. Okay? You can even say 0 when there's nothing after it. So heed, heed, heat, heed. Okay? For the last one, I'll save it for next time. Okay? The last one has to do with 3 types of L in English. There's what we call clear L, listen, lose, allow, like that, and dark L. When we pronounce dark L, it's more back in the mouth, file, like that. So it's an L, but a different realization of L. Okay? I'll save it for next time. For today, I would like to move on to the second PowerPoint file, which is this one. So now that you know the difference between a phoneme and an allophone, right? A phoneme consists of many allophones. Now the second issue that we try to answer is different patterning of different sequences of English sounds. So which of the following words are possible English words? Prill, is it a possible English word? Yes, right? Prill. It's possible because we have PR, right? Pro, for example, pre. Okay? Shriek, squeak, not likely because we never have SKR like that. Blast, possible, okay? Because we have blast, for example. Raft, for example. Ramut, not possible because we never have an R before an M like that. So this is the type of question that we'll be answering, okay? So how do we know which patterns are possible, which patterns are not possible? That's because we know what we call the phonotactic constraints, okay? Meaning that there are some things that prohibit the formation of certain sequences, okay? There are some restrictions on sequences, on sound patterns in English, okay? So, for example, English allows TR at the beginning of a word, not at the end of a word. Okay, so you have words like tree, T-R-E-E, tree, like that, or train, T-R-A-I-N, train. But at the end of the word, TR is not possible. RT is possible. C-A-R-T, cart, like that, possible. But TR at the end is not possible. It may be possible in other languages, but not in English. Okay? And the most important thing in this chapter is the fact that at the end of, at the beginning, I'll change to this. At the beginning, in the initial position, English allows up to three sounds. And we call this cluster, consonant cluster. Okay? Cluster means a group of things. Okay? This is initial, okay? Initial consonant cluster, meaning in the front, English allows up to three. Korean doesn't do this. Korean doesn't allow maybe even consonant cluster in the beginning. Okay? Initial consonant cluster in English must always start with an S. If you want to have up to three, it must always start with an S. There cannot be other things. There cannot be P or T or K. If you want to up to three, okay? S, and then the second row, the second sound is either P, T, or K. Voiceless stop. And the last sound is the glide, like this. L, R, Y, W. And we are talking about up to three, okay? You can have two, like PL, PR, like that, TL, TR, like that. You could have that, okay? And let's see. For example, SPR, you have things like spray, like that. So up to three, okay? So this is what we call the phonotactic constraint. You will not see, for example, the theta before P, before an L. That's not possible in English, like that. Okay? And P and F is also not possible in English. It may be possible in German, but not in English. Okay? And in Korean, not possible at all, this cluster. Okay? So that's what we call the consonant phonotactic constraint. And end with the tail can occur in English in the middle, like finger, like that, or singing, like that, singing, right? But never, and let's see this. N could be in the middle, in the medial position, as in singing, right? So this is the medial position. And at the end in English, but never at the beginning. Beginning, never. In other languages, maybe it can appear in the beginning, but not in English. So you will not see words like ngo, like that in English. Maybe in other languages you might see, but not in English. Okay? And at the end, there may be up to 3 sounds as well, okay, in the end. And when non-native speakers study English, if their phonotactic constraints in the first language are different from those in English, then they'll try to do something to the constraints here in English that would make them sound non-native. For example, Korean people can try to break up the sequence that we talked about here, the sequence here. They can try to break it up by putting some vowels in between, like strike, S-T-R-I-K-E, strike. They might say suturaiku, like that, because they try to manipulate the phonotactic constraints that English has in order to match that of their native language, like that, suturaiku. So the phonotactic constraint, the knowledge of that is useful, right? Now we know that there are some constraints in what sounds can occur in the medial, in the beginning, and in the end, right? Now we will study syllable structure, okay, in English. In English and in other languages, the most important thing in a syllable, okay, the most important thing in a syllable is what we call the nucleus here. And the nucleus is maybe 98% of the time, the nucleus is a vowel. Okay? All vowels can be the nucleus of a syllable. Nucleus meaning the center, right? The heart, the core of a syllable. Right? There can be other things. There can be what we call the onset. There could be what we call the coda. But these are optional. The only required thing for a syllable, for there to be a syllable, is the nucleus. The nucleus is the heart of the syllable, and it 99% of the time, 98% of the time, it consists of a single vowel. Okay? So one syllable is one vowel. Okay? So for example, pot, there's one vowel, so one syllable, like that. Okay? Still, one vowel, one syllable, right? Maybe in Korean, you would pronounce it like sutil, which means there are two vowels, two syllables. But in English, there's no vowel between S and T, so it's always one syllable. Okay? So the nucleus is the heart of the syllable. The most important thing, and 98% of the time, is a vowel. Some consonants can be syllabic, meaning some consonants can serve like a vowel, like N or M or L or R, but those are not very common. And then the onset is the initial sequence, right? We study the initial sequence. ST, SR, like that. The initial cluster. And then the coda is the final cluster, final group of sounds. So in the word plant, which means like vegetable, like a crop, plant, the air is the nucleus, and you have two consonants here, which serve as the onset, the initial sound of that air. And then finally, you have two consonant sounds that serve as the coda, right? So this is a syllable, and it consists of the onset, which means the initial consonant, and the rhyme. The rhyme consists of the nucleus and the coda, like that. The coda is the ending consonant. The nucleus is the central vowel. Okay? So syllable is the smallest independently pronounceable unit. It's pronounceable because there's a vowel, right? Vowel is very important. Without a vowel, you cannot pronounce. The onset, the consonant before the V, you know that. The rhyme consists of a vowel and any following consonants called the coda. And the rhyme consists of the nucleus and the coda. You already know the nucleus. It's the core, the center, usually the vowel. And some liquids and some nasal sounds could be the nucleus, the coda, the consonant after the vowel. And we talked about open syllable. Remember, open syllables are syllables which have no coda. Nothing comes after the vowel. Closed syllable, a syllable that has a coda, as in beat, because you have the T that closes off the vowel, right? Or thought, like that. Now, what we'll do is we'll try to analyze the syllable structure, okay? And these are some easy to follow rules, steps to write the representation of the syllable structure of English words. So the first thing that you do when you want to analyze syllables is that you have to look for vowels, right? Because vowels are the most important thing, the nucleus. So you look for vowels, okay? And then give every vowel a separate syllable. So whenever you see a vowel, that's one syllable. Another vowel, another syllable, like that. So if you see 3 vowels, then you have 3 syllables, okay? And then now you have to take care of the onset and the coda. Remember, you take care of the onset and the coda. What you want to do is to take as many onset as possible before the vowel, okay? And then consider whether that cluster is a good cluster or not. Does it follow the phonotactic constraints that we talked about earlier, right? If it follows the phonotactic constraints, then you can take it as the onset, and the rest will be the coda, okay? That's hard to see. Now I want to show you how to do this. So let's look at the word conflict, okay? Let's look at the word conflict. The word conflict, we want to analyze the syllable structure of this word, right? The word conflict. Now, when we analyze syllable, we use the pronunciation. We don't care how it's spelled. So the word conflict is like this, right? Conflict. Right? We don't care about how it's spelled. We only care about its pronunciation. So to analyze the syllable structure here, how many syllables are there? Again, the number of the syllable depends on the number of the nucleus or the vowel. So which one is the vowel? This and this. So 2 vowels, so 2 syllables. So the first step is give every vowel a separate syllable, right? So this is the nucleus. So that's how I write it off. So nucleus. So we have 2 syllables here. That's step 1, right? Step 1, identify the nucleus. Step 2, now you identify the nucleus, you have the, the coda and the onset left. Now you have to take care of the onset first, okay? In this one, the onset is to the left, right? Because the onset is the consonant sound before, so before the nucleus, so must be here. So the onset is here, easy. K can start a word, right? K can start a word, so that's the onset. So this is the onset and the nucleus. And then now we have to take care of the onset here, okay? Let's do the onset first before we do the coda. Take as many, the step is take as many sounds as you can to be the onset. FL, Is it a possible sequence in English? FL. Do we have words that start with FL? Flock, fly, fling, right? Floss. So FL is a possible onset, possible cluster to start a syllable, right? Floss, fly, FL. So could be the onset. Now, can we take this in too? Can we take in as that, as part of that too? Like NFL to be like this syllable. Can we? FL, we sure that we can, because there's floss, fly, flop, whatever, right? Flip, flap, whatever. FL is that sequence is certain, right? But do we have NFL in English as a pattern, as a sequence? We don't. Remember, I said that English allows up to 3, right? Up to 3 initial consonants, but the first has to be S. The second PTK, the last could be any glide. But here it violates the phonotactic constraints, right? So N cannot be in this, in the second syllable. So the syllable cutoff seems to be here. Okay? So FL can be the onset of the next syllable. So we can have FL as the onset of the next syllable. And then the onset joined with the nucleus, and KT is the coda, and the nucleus and the coda constitute the rhyme. So that's the second syllable. So we have FL as the onset, and then E is the nucleus. Next to KT is the coda, and then the coda and the nucleus make up the rhyme. The rhyme plus the onset is a syllable, like that. Now, the unfortunate N cannot be in the next syllable. It has to be the coda of this one, right? The coda. So this is the rhyme plus the syllable, like that. So we have 2 syllables in this word, and the syllable boundary seems to be can and then flicked, like that. You might ask me, why do we have to do the onset first and not the coda first? The reason is that we do the onset first, FL or NFL. The reason we do that is that speakers prefer to have an onset, a set of onset, rather than the coda, because a coda appears after the nucleus, and it makes the syllable heavy. So speakers tend to prefer to have the heavy sequence, heavy cluster in the beginning rather than at the end. Okay? So that's why we do the onset first before we do the coda. So what is left that cannot be put into the onset of the next syllable will be the coda. Because if we have too many codas, can't flow, like that. Imagine that we have to pronounce a word like can't flow and then ick. That's not good, right? Because this puts a lot of effort, a lot of responsibility on the part of the speaker. So speakers tend to have onset, tend to prefer to pronounce a heavy onset rather than the heavy coda, like that. So we have to do the onset first. Okay. Let's look at the next one as an example. What is the next word on the slide? Supreme. Supreme. How do we do this? Analyze the syllable structure. We have su, right? Supreme. So supreme, like this. Supreme. or some people have a schwa, which is possible. Now, how many syllables do we have here? 2. One vowel, so 2 syllables. We take care of that first. So this is the nucleus, so I just use the N. Now, we take care of what next? We take care of the onset, right? The onset of this is easy, just S, right? S is the onset for sure, because there's nothing else. Oh, onset. Now, the onset of the next syllable, right? Should we just take in the R like that, or P and R? So the question is whether P and R is a good sequence, right? According to English, the English phonotactic constraints. Do we have P and R as an initial sound in English? An initial sequence in English? We do, right? Like pray, to pray, right? For example, right? So in this case, it's a good sequence. So we can take the whole sequence in as the onset. So both can be the onset. And then this is the nucleus, so this has to be the coda. So this is the rhyme. So plus a syllable like that. And there's no coda here, so we have just the syllable. So this is a syllable. So it's supreme like that. So always do the onset first, because it's better to have a cluster at the beginning from a psychological perspective and also from a practical perspective for native speakers to have a heavy onset rather than to have a heavy coda. Okay? So that's why we don't divide a syllable like this, supra, im, like that. No, because this is too heavy. Right? Can you spend maybe 2 minutes on the last one, Atlanta? Atlanta. So can you draw a syllable tree based on the last one, last word, Atlanta? How many first, how many vowels? Now we have a problem, right? Because, okay, we are done with that because there's no onset, that's easy. But here we have a problem. TL, is it a possible sequence in English to start a word? Do we have TL, tl, in English? We have TR, right? But we don't have TL. We don't have words that start with TL in English. So TL is not possible. So maybe only L is possible. So that's the onset. And this has to be the coda of this thing, right? So that's the rhyme. So we have the rhyme here. And it constitutes a syllable. No onset. Onset, and this is the coda. And they make up the rhyme. And there's the syllable. NT is not a possible sequence. We don't have a word that starts with an NT. So N has to be the coda, and T has to be the onset, like that. So we have 3 syllables, at, land, t, like that. Okay. So we'll come back and continue with phonology, okay, next time. For today, we talk about allophone and phonemes. We talked about the syllable structure, and we also talk about phonotactic constraints, okay? In the handout that I gave you today, the aspiration handout, you'll find that there is a page that has some exercises in there. Can you do the first page? You should be able to do the first page now, given what we talked about today. The first page has to do with syllable tree representation of election, frisbee, and advertise. So just draw trees, syllable trees for these words, okay? And the second question asks you to transcribe the word and also mark the aspiration. You should be able to mark the aspiration in these words if you know the rules such as where stress falls and so on. Okay, you should be able to do that by now. Okay, and the rest you cannot do because we haven't talked about everything in phonology. For the homework that I gave out last time, I have the answer key here. So you can pick up one answer key for you to do self-study at home, okay? And after you check your mistake, you identify your mistakes, you identify your weaknesses and strengths, I will have a real homework assignment next time for you to do and turn in, and I will grade the homework. So this will be important for your self-studying, the key, the answer key.